Can we get straight into the subject of Tyson before we do anything else, before we do the box office top 10?
100%, let's do that.
We've just heard the Toback interview, and I think it's important to kind of pick it up straight away. So, you were saying in there that in terms of it being a film that prioritises boxing, that it's important and that it takes the subject seriously. So I want to differentiate right at the beginning of this between it being a film about boxing and it being a film about Tyson Wilson, because obviously what I know about sport, and this will relate also to Damned United, wouldn't fill the back of a postage stamp. Okay? I don't know about nor claim to understand boxing, and I think that if you, who know about boxing, think that it's a significant film about boxing, then I think that is to be taken seriously. So do you think that it's an important film about boxing, the sport, rather than Tyson the person?
Yeah, I think it gets across clearly that he will never be regarded as the greatest fighter in the world or even in the top 5, but it was something that I think John Rawlings said to me, a big boxing commentator in Britain, and it's always resonated with me. He said there's a difference between someone who on their night is the greatest fighter in the world and someone who is one of the greatest fighters there's ever been. On his night, Mike Tyson was unstoppable. He did things at amateur level, which the film flags up beautifully, knocking people out with gloves that are too heavy to knock people out with. That's why they're that weight. That's why they're that size. It's not about knocking people out. He was doing it in 8 seconds. While on form, and while he wasn't caught up in his own hubris and not training when he was world champion, if he trained for a fight, he was going to win that fight. And it's so sad, it chronicles so well how he turns into a journeyman, the saddest point of Mike Tyson's career. So in a boxing front, does the job beautifully.
Okay, so I accept all of that. I think the problem with the film is that what it doesn't do is aggressively enough deal with the subject of Mike Tyson and his relationship with women. In fact, it absolutely runs away from the subject in a way that I think is rather disgraceful. He is allowed, I mean, obviously, he was convicted in terms of the rape conviction. He is allowed to refer, as James Toback said in that interview, to his victim as a wretched swine. And yet we hear from his own mouth his description of his relationships with women that are literally the sort of thing that you would show to a jury and go, I'm sorry, the prosecution rests. There is one point, now correct me if I'm wrong, because I saw this in Cannes. It was a strange thing. I think it was the first film I saw when I got to Cannes in May of last year. And I mean, I have reservations about James Toback anyway. I think he's a very manly kind of man. I don't trust his sexual politics at all. And I think that there are moments in the film when Tyson says things like he's talking about, an animal watching its prey after it's been wounded, and he seems to think that there is nothing wrong with describing a gaze in those ways. Sorry, you're looking concerned at me.
I just came away from the film feeling like it did show Mike Tyson up as a sexual predator and did show up as shortcomings, and there was a telling line from Mike Tyson when he claims to this day he didn't rape Desiree Washington. It happens that the director James Toback agrees with him, and I agree absolutely. That makes it one-sided beyond belief in the coverage of that. He did take the decision not to interview anyone else. Don King, Desiree Washington, everyone else would be queuing up round the corner. And I like that. I think it's a brave documentary just to have Mike Tyson. I think it does show up, and he is accountable for it. And he says, "I'm accountable for everything that's happened to me. It's my fault."
What you don't get is you don't get him pushed on the subject of what actually happened there. What you get is him able... I mean, he is from his own mouth condemned. I mean, he says things about his relationship to women that just make you think, I'm sorry, I'm not entirely sure on what planet saying those views out loud is considered to be in any way except... I mean, here's the only way I'd reverse it. If somebody made comments about racial comments in the way that he makes comments that I consider to be misogynistic, they would literally be hounded out of town. And it's funny that, in a way, I think I agree. I mean, I came away from the documentary thinking, absolutely, on every front is he guilty as sin in terms of that part of his life.
Yes.
And I just can't imagine a situation in which somebody who espoused views that were that racist in the same way that he is, I think, rampantly misogynist. People just wouldn't say, well, I'm sorry, I can't get beyond that. And my problem, therefore, is I simply can't get beyond that. I just cannot get beyond the lack of sympathy with, I'm sorry, your views on women are so abhorrent, are so appalling, are so stuck in a mindset that I just can't even begin to engage with, that beyond that, I'm not interested in what you have to say. And when he starts discussing his tattoos, and when he starts discussing the other parts of life, you think, this from the mind of a man who looks at one half of the population, 51% of the population, as it turns out, in a way which is just reprehensible beyond belief. And I'm quite happy to admit this, that provided a stumbling block for me beyond which I could not get, which is why I began this by saying, from a sporting point of view, is it a better documentary than that? Because what I really want to see is somebody saying, okay, hang on, you have to stop now and we have to talk this through. You have to justify this kind of thing. And I can't imagine a documentary in which if somebody espoused views that were that racist, that wouldn't happen.
I agree with you 100%. The only thing, I think what you said is really pertinent, he's condemned by his own mouth.
He is, yes.
I didn't come away from the documentary feeling any sympathy for Mike Tyson, but I felt like Toback had opened up his mind and showed me the demons dancing around inside.
Okay,
I thought he did that brilliant.
Well, I think in the end we come away with the same feeling about the man himself. I suppose my problem is that what I want to see, therefore, is I want to see some interrogation about that. I want to see if you're allowing your subject to use phrases like wretched and terrible about what I want to see is interrogation. I don't want him to just be allowed to say and go, because actually part of me was sitting there in the screening going, hang on. I don't care about anything else. You have to stop now and address this particular issue. I mean, I do completely accept that it's a stumbling block beyond which I could not get. The other thing is, I think, actually, in terms of the subject relationship with the director, I think Toback is slightly infatuated with him. Yeah. And it's funny that he mentions black and white, because obviously there's that very strange scene in black and white in which Robert Downey Jr. comes on to Tyson and almost gets himself, quite, realistically messed up in a very real and, legally binding way. What I thought was that actually Toback finds him more sympathetic than I wanted the director to find him. I accept that that's a personal issue, but I mean, it is a personal political thing for me. I just can't get interested in or worked up about somebody whose views on women are, and I think you'd agree with me, are just loathsome.
And it's so important when you watch this movie, if you go and see this documentary, it's definitely a must for boxing fans. And watch when Tyson can't speak because of tears. It's not when he cheated on his wife. It's not Desiree Washington. It's when he talks about Castamato, his muse, the man who took him through, and about when he talks about becoming heavyweight champion in the world. That's when he chokes on his words.
Sure.
Which is a remarkable insight to the working of his mind. Well, we've done that slightly irregularly.
But I think it's important because
definitely.
After you talk to Toback about it, and it's interesting because Toback he talks a really good film.
Yeah.
I mean, you could sit there and talk to him for an hour.
I was romanced by him, I have to admit.
I know, yeah, well, you were slightly... But that's great, hey, there's a marvellous moment when one is kind of seduced by the presence of a filmmaker whose work one has admired. Frankly, I don't share your admiration, but I think off the back of that conversation, we had to do the review straight away.
Yeah.